right, well, I am Kirsten Nelson. I am moderating this panel from a very deeply personal place. I called it corporate creative. We were kind of jokingly calling it going corporate at some point. And then we threw in this very corporate-y phrase, experience design at scale. No one ever knows what the fuck at scale means. I hate that phrase, and it's in our title. Because when you go corporate, you gotta start talking like that. And it's this uncomfortable moment. I have been told by certain clients of mine, mega corporation clients, that I better learn their language. And they actually wrote it in a project we were working on together, shaming artists for not speaking their language. So I was like, oh, I get it, guys. You know, I should highlight this and say, got it. So this panel is about this very real question that I have been feeling in this industry. I started out in AV, commercial AV. I ran an AV trade publication for a billion years. And then I moved over to more creative tech world, and now I host events there, and I write articles, and I work for brands. So I've been seeing this pattern with a lot of my friends who have studios and creative practices, having to get, like, jobs, get jobs within a corporation for a variety of reasons. Partly because work right now is a complicated thing, budgets are like disappearing. So it's a very real question of like, if I want to take my art practice or my creative tech practice, my theater background, and apply it in a corporate setting, how is that going to feel? So I created a panel of amazing human beings who have done this exact maneuver. So we're gonna talk a little bit about their backgrounds and how they got there and how they're managing this balance I'm talking about. And then we're gonna open it up. There is an official Q&A at the end, but also we might even edge toward more of a conversation later. We're gonna see how it goes. It's a generative experience right now. And by the way, no slides, because I'm analog as hell. Yeah, exactly. So I will let Aya begin. Introduce yourself, and then I'm going to have everyone introduce themselves and kind of explain their path as exactly how I'm talking about, like the creative person, creative practice into corporate scenario. So yeah, take it away, Aya.
So hello, my name is Aya Kapinska, and about maybe just over 20 years ago, I started out as an interaction designer. Fresh out of grad school here, I moved to New York to go to grad school. Always wanted to come to New York. It was like my dream since I saw MTV as a kid. And my very first project at Interactive Agency, with RGA, my very first project was working on a WAP site. Shout out if anyone, I see some people nodding, a WAP site for a large telecom. Stayed there for a few years, loved it. Got to work on making giant interactive video in Times Square to websites, it's kind of standard. But I got burned out. I went back to grad school, this time to do literary arts. So it was poetry and electronic media. And I've always maintained that as a practice, sometimes more, sometimes less, but that's the art practice that I have, language-based media, typically interactive. And after grad school, I just started freelancing, just freelance UX, and using that to kind of fund the artwork over the years. Eventually got hired at an agency where I was more or less working full-time, but not officially, like one of those permalance people. This was at a company called Barbarian Group, and it was really didn't enjoy the work, but it was money, it was stability, I liked the people. But I also got a little bit burnt out, and I was like, okay, I will leave a job where I made more money even than I do now. Because the agencies always make more money than in-house, I think. And I was like, I'm going to teach. I'm going to be an adjunct professor. So I went to I'm like, here to here. So fulfilling. I loved it. I was at the New School teaching design and technology. Eventually here at NYU, Tandon, also teaching both places part-time. So sometimes I had to bike across the bridge from one to the other same day. Balancing that with freelance work and artwork. But as you can imagine, freelance work, last couple of years really dried up. It was very challenging. I was getting, maybe I had 6 weeks of work in a year and a half, in addition to adjunct teaching, so I was really struggling. Out of the blue, about a year ago, in November, old colleague that I don't think I would have recognized him on the street, who works for a large telecom firm, just reached out to me on LinkedIn, and I had the green cone of shame. It's like the looking for work. And I was like, okay, I roll. I'll go for the interview. But it went very well, and I was very charmed by the person who would become my immediate manager. I thought he was a wonderful, kind human being. I was like, this is 4 times what I'm making, so it's largely economic. It's also moving into different kind of work. And like I said, interaction design, UX. Oh, I skipped a bunch of years in, part of that freelance was in museum and interactive exhibits, but this was more service design. Like, I didn't say that, I didn't actually do that before, but it's one of those, like, if you fulfill part of the qualities, so I've been working there since January, and also have to say my views are my own, not of the large telecom. And I'm still a bit struggling. It took me a good 6 months just to get over the identity crisis and kind of mourning that my freelance business is over. It's over. At the same time, my artwork is shifting. I'm working on, I don't feel like writing. I've done a lot more drawing lately, just analog pen and paper. I've never in my life at 5 p.m. stopped thinking about work, and now I can, and it's almost expected to just stop. So that's a change, but I'm over the identity crisis, still trying to get a sense of the culture. It has been a little bit harder of a fit, as much as I enjoy my teammates, but that's my story now. I'll hand it over to Chris.
Thank you for that lovely story, and it's not so far off from my own, right? So, my name is Rachel Harris. I still identify as a production manager, okay? And that has been my life for really for a very long time. I went to college for backstage, theatrical, studied stage management and sound design, and then went on to become a lighting tech, which was great, especially in my youth. Lighting tech is so physical and athletic and climbing ladders, and I then realized, looking at the older guys, that you also throw your back out. So around the time I was in my late 20s, I decided that was not something I wanted to pursue, throwing my back out, and I moved into more of the paperwork side of backstage, technical director, and eventually production manager, always with stage management as a gig I know I can get. I like to do festivals. If anybody's looking for a stage manager, festivals and music shows, that's kind of my bag. So I did that for about 15 years and built a nice career, mainly focused on uptown, Manhattan, Harlem, for the most part, a little bit of the Bronx. And I was, again, young, having a great time, riding my bike from venue to venue, 3 or 4 shows a day or gigs in a day and things like that. It was fun, I had the energy. As I started getting older, I started realizing that there were opportunities to use the skill set, the wide skill set that I had built, in other zones. Basically, I was seeing my buddy go to, they were building a new Time Warner building. I remember this was the early kind of 2012, 2013 kind of time. And he was getting like $75 an hour to just run cable. No decision making, no schedule building, no phone calls, no anything. So I started looking at corporate AV. And I got very lucky, really corporate AV. We're sitting here in New York, so you all kind of probably know that either New York will welcome you or it might not let you in. And corporate AV really, really embraced me very quickly. I was looking for jobs for a couple of months. Some lady I hadn't applied to called me and invited me to have a job at a financial institution. This was at a bank. I mean, I don't work for them anymore. It was Deutsche Bank. They're not even in that building anymore. And the job ended up being, they called it the VIP Technical Facility Lead. You know what that means? Technical director. So we had a theater in the bottom and a conference center on the top, and I basically was the technical director for both of those. So the transition was very welcoming and smooth and easy for me, and that's pretty much my career path. Now I work for another financial institution who shall not be named, and of course it is important that everyone understands that the views and opinions that are expressed in this moment are strictly my own and have no bearing on that financial institution. But I do want to just finish a little bit, because what I do there, again, was a transition. out of kind of the facility leadership into something that's more like a strictly IT role. Right now, I'm basically an IT director, but live streaming and digital signage. So again, not far off from the same type of work that I was doing, you know. What's that?
No people.
What do you mean no
Well,
people?
like the signage, like the events don't have, like,
Well,
the regular people.
We're doing virtual events as well as on-site events. So the pandemic actually changed the trajectory of what that looks like, right? When I first got the job, it was the easiest job I ever had in my life. I pressed go live, and then I waited for it to finish, and they were like paying me for this, and I would just send out one Excel sheet for a year. I started there in 2018. 2019 came, and I was happy to be in that seat because I did know how to do a show. And we were able to kind of utilize some of the prior experience I'd had to make that transition. But yeah, but there's people, we have virtual people.
Oh yeah, and Rachel, you were saying too, like when in 2020 when it hit, they were like, oh wait, we have someone who knows how to actually be a producer, like can do a production. That was like a bonus.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky because I had sat in a lot of hot seats.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
to like, yeah, I was happy to
Very
be
well
there.
positioned as the person entering this role, you know, like, you know, et voila. Nice. All right.
Shelley.
Hello. I'm an interesting person on this panel because I think the question is, what is corporate, right? My background is I was a theatrical lighting designer for many, many years. I worked on Broadway, off Broadway for a while, and then I transitioned. I'm a big transitioner. I like to transition usually every 10 to 12 years. So I did that for a long time, and then I transitioned into retail spaces. I started lighting windows on Madison Avenue, and then from there moved into entire stores. So I would relight like the Levi's store, and I would say to them, I can guarantee you that you will make more money next year if you do a ring total from this date to this date. You will make more money, or I'll take less of a fee. And I would always win because if you actually point light at a product, you can sell it. I mean, it seems obvious, but you know, have you ever been into stores that are terribly lit?
Yeah.
It's, yeah. So I would fix that for many years. And I was doing that, and when you work windows, it's a life. You literally go to work at 7 o'clock at night, and you work overnight in these stores, and then you're done at 10 in the morning the next day. You see many, many interesting things on the street, as you can imagine. But you know, as I was getting older, I realized that you know I could still roll, I could still do this, but maybe some sort of consistency would be interesting. And I met with a man who's actually in this room, and about working for a vendor. It was a company formerly Sharp Weisberg and World Stage, and they were looking for somebody that was creative. Basically, somebody said, you and Josh would get along. I think the two of you should have a conversation. And we did. And my very first title, which I had challenges with, was Director of Corporate Design. And I remember saying, like, what does that mean? Like, why am I Director of Corporate Design instead of Director for Design? And the reasoning was that we wanted to be mindful that although there was a designer on staff at this vendor, you know, with a vendor, we weren't selling creative, right? Which is something that, like, still vendors continue to have these challenges with, if there's anybody that's creative within the world. And what was really amazing about this opportunity for me is that I continued to evolve and learned. When I started at this job, I didn't understand video, to be quite honest. I was a lighting designer. I remember a friend of mine said to me, okay, it's 1080, and I was like, what is that? I mean, you know, giving myself a tiny bit, like this is 2012, you know, it's a while ago. And I didn't understand what it meant, and suddenly, you know, and I've now found myself explaining, you know, the evolution to 4K to many people, you know, sales associates included. At the same time that I've done all of this, and part of the reason that Kirsten and I talked about me coming to, I taught at NYU for a number of years. So I teach theater kids that are coming out of undergrad with these skills that I think are phenomenal. I think theater kids are some of the best hires you can manage to have because they understand collaboration, and they understand how to work in teams, and they will actually get up when you walk into the room laden with packages and help you. But it's not common, honestly. Like, there are kids that have, you know, spent most of their careers at desktops, and they don't understand the physical need to be in a room to collaborate. But the class that I teach at NYU has been, it's literally called How to Succeed. It's a capstone class, and it's about introducing them to careers that they didn't even know existed because they're, you know, trying to be lighting designers or scenic designers or whatever. And those skill sets are incredibly valuable to push into other realms, right? Creative is creative, and I think that that's I think your ability to take what you do and how you understand it and transition it into something else it's a luxury, but it's also like a flexible brain, and I think that it's important, especially these days when our paths are continuing to change, right? As we continue to work in this world, the expectations of what we need to do as creatives or as producers continues to evolve, and being able to be nimble with that, I think, is super, super valuable. And feel free to comment or ask questions as we go, because I think I see a lot of people nodding.
Yeah, it's such an interesting time because I think that's exactly it. Like, what are the career paths, you know, coming out of school now? And I think that's also why this topic is so valuable.
Well, I mean, and I guess I'm curious if the room, like, specialization was a thing. Like, at least when I started, you know, in this AV world, like, specialization was a big thing, and I feel like I am much more attracted to a generalist. I am much more attracted to somebody who will do lots of different things and won't just say, I'm only gonna sit at this desk. I'm only gonna, you know, work in this field. And it's still, I think it's still an issue, but I'm finding that as budgets are decreasing for projects, you need somebody that can occasionally stand up and help you run a cable or do something, sweep the floor, right?
Yeah, Laura Frank's amazing talk on that, like the incredible pool of knowledge you're supposed to be good at. Like, now when you start a job, you're like, oh, you can do all of this, right? Yeah. Yeah, is that something you saw when you were teaching, like just the amount of stuff people have to understand?
Especially for working in a graduate program, design and technology, as well as here, interactive design and integrated design and media. I'm like, did I say it right? Looking over IBM. But in those cases, you have students that are coming from a variety of backgrounds. It's almost like teaching 12 different classes rather than one class of 12. You have to tailor what you're doing to each person. I've done a lot of like thesis advising, so then that's helping someone develop their project and bringing it forward. That's a one-to-one scale, which has turned out to be something similar I could take to the corporate world. Like, okay, how do we grow, or my freelance projects, like just how do we grow this into one big area? But so definitely being able to be a generalist and advise on, okay, you're doing a application to help autistic children. You're doing like a self-exploration installation. This other person is going to like do a swimming performance that involves like projected light media. And you have to be able to converse with all approaches of the kids and help kids in their 20s of the students and bring them along. And so I definitely think that the generalist has served me well. And also just from years in the industry, after 20-some years, I've done a lot of different kinds of projects, whether it's a tiny mobile screen, an immersive exhibition, interactive software, like I've worked at Lego and Martha Stewart, like Nike, like all sorts of like large places that I freelanced at, and also helping tiny startups. So it's that, sure, I'll do what you need, I'll do what you need.
And I think that corporate is like, somebody said in one of the panels earlier about everybody wants spectacle. And I think that corporate theater has obviously gotten much, much more spectacular. And some of the advantages of people that work in multiple areas is that you can learn things in a theater show and then take those techniques and apply them into a corporate show. And I've seen that happen over and over and over again.
Yeah.
You know.
Rachel, how have you seen that evolve actually? Like with the stage, do you see the stage productions getting more fancy in corporate?
So I do intern communication,
Oh, okay. Oh,
right?
gotcha. Yeah.
And so I really think of my job as, well, part of my job being knowing what to give the people who are the communicators but may not identify as creatives, how can we give them the tools that unlock their creativity? That's literally my mission, that is my unspoken mission, now spoken, is to be able to create a technical environment that makes people feel safe to try special things, because I would love to have an environment that is just full of special creative ideas happening all the time.
Yeah, that's so funny. It makes me think of two different directions. Like Shelley, I remember you mentioned in your first role as the director of corporate, like your job was to be the
They
creative.
changed it to director of design very quickly.
Oh yeah, there you go. Even
That's
better.
right.
Sparkle, sparkle.
It's too many words.
Yeah, exactly. Just get to know what I really do, you know? Yeah, that's the fun thing. I mean, you can bring this element of personality and, you know, it can be welcomed, you know, like, trust me, you know, let's just break down the barrier. Let's get through the corp speak and get to the heart of what I'm really doing. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just language, but I also think that, you know, specifically having creatives that are within the vendor setups, I think it's super valuable. The thing that, that I always found the most gratifying is getting to play with new technology first, and then figuring out how to show it off to other creatives, because that's really what my role was, you know, particularly with WorldStage, and now with Fuse Technical Group where I work now, it's a lot of it is about virtual production and figuring, you know, explaining the process to different kinds of people that have no understanding of it, or getting to work with, you know, fabulous teams that do understand. It varies.
I have a question kind of about that. Can I jump in?
Please.
Sure, yeah.
So you guys have all been talking about all the different kind of titles and everything that exist in these different entities, and what I've kind of observed in a lot of corporate structures is that it'll look really different from company to company, the internal makeup of the team, like the marketing team versus the internal AV team versus brand team and all that kind of stuff. What do you see your roles as, or how have those roles changed as corporations have become more tech savvy, tech curious, spectacle curious? And then how do you kind of guide your students or people coming up through Fuse or your organizations? How do you kind of help them figure out how to funnel themselves into different structures across different types of corporations or entities?
I want to go, yeah.
Please
okay.
go. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I will try to stay focused on your question, because there's so many
That's
things
it.
that I want to talk about off of that, and the first thing that comes to mind for me is just the idea that corporations, and I think as artists, you just talked about this, Shelley, how at NYU you're training your artists to know that there are other jobs they can do. They did not have that at my school. And so many realtors from my graduating class now, because that's what people did, and I really hung on for a long time. I believe that corporations have a place for everyone, no matter what your skill set is. I think of it like the Army. If you're a trombonist, Goldman Sachs probably needs a trombonist, right? Like, for some reason, like maybe not every day, but there's space for that, you know? And so whatever it is you do, like, I think that you can fit it into what the structure of the organization is. But what you're asking about is the different structures of the organization. And they are, and the thing is, they're big, they're corporate, there are many different groups that grow up to do the same thing that may or may not even know of each other. So at the end of the day, I mean, my job could probably exist in any of 5 different sections of the company, and I'd be just as happy doing it in any one of them. And there's probably a replica of me somewhere doing it somewhere else. The digital signage, no. But you know, the other things, there probably are others who are doing something similar. So I don't know, I don't think it even matters, like if you're on the marketing team or the IT team or whichever one it is. I do have a question that comes out of this, though, because I kind of want to understand who we're talking to a little
Yeah.
bit more. So from an audience perspective, can I ask the audience a
Yeah,
question?
go for it.
So I'm curious, I want to know what perspective you guys are coming from. Could be people who are interested in maybe bringing their skill set into corporate, like getting a job, right? Getting a full-time job from a corporation. Or people who are interested in selling their skill sets to corporations and kind of capturing more of that corporate business. So if getting a job is your interest, can I get you to raise your hands, like for A? Yeah, I'm just curious, there's no
It's A
judgment
and
here.
B.
Yeah, okay, all right,
Little
okay.
from column A, little from column B.
Okay, okay, and so then a lot of column Bs in here, right? Okay, good, well, good, well, we've got great representation for all of that. I am your get a job person, so if you want to, I'd always like to have a job. I like health insurance a lot, and even when I'm freelancing, I keep a part-time job that will satisfy that, so that's my perspective. Thank you. Comments?
I mean, I don't feel like, the companies that I've worked for have never had more than 500 employees, so I would never say that they're truly a corporate structure. And, you know, some of them are structured than others. It's, you know, it's really that simple. I think that companies are like families often, and you deal with the idiosyncrasies and the challenges of the organizations that you deal with. But, you know, I've often said this in other panels, like, I think that the thing that doesn't get talked about enough is feelings, in a strange way, because I think that people in this line of business have, you know, emotional connections to what they do, whether you're creative or not. And sometimes the imbalances on a team are very much just about feelings and not identifying them early enough in the process or actually talking about them as you go, you know? And hopefully, as, you know, there is a very powerful nature of some of the younger kids that are coming into our industry, and they have different levels and filters of being able to move forward through things, and maybe it'll rebalance our work-life balance a bit, probably not, but maybe, you know. And I think that as we continue to move forward in the industry, you know, sometimes it's nice to be surrounded by people that you actually care about and you love to work with, right? Those are the best kinds of jobs. And so if you can find that, and what I thought was really interesting when we were talking was how, like, because you were very much an artist, right?
Yeah.
And how, you know, you were talking about some of the literature that you were mentioning with some of your collaborators or some of your coworkers.
Quoting the I Ching is like part of my, I'm really bad at slide decks, I've never figured that out, so.
But my point is that you're building a community, and that's I think that's the value of what you can bring to any organization, whether it's you know, how many people.
I just have a question, because you guys are all talking about sort of being generalists and valuing that, but then kind of quote unquote going corporate.
Mm.
Do you think that corporate culture like requires generalists to go be specialists at because you get a title and you have a silo or a specific hierarchy? Do you think that like you wouldn't have been able to do this kind of corporate work in the beginning, that you had to do the other stuff first and be generalists and then go to this other area? Or do you think it's open to generalists?
I actually had a note about this in my Evernote, if I may.
Yeah.
And it's actually, for my experience, it's the opposite, right? So yes, within theater, I may be a generalist, right? I lighting, sound, a little bit of all of them. But in the environment that I'm in right now, I'm really a specialist, right? And I'm inspired to be a specialist. I really, really like the work that I do. But to advance a career in a corporate environment like this one, I'm finding that they want you to be a generalist. So like if you want to maintain your specialization and your kind of identity and expertness, then that will not necessarily be the right road to get advancement in that kind of environment. So it's kind of a balance of being a generalist and specialist, but I would like to hear what you all think about that, because that's my experience.
My experience, so maybe it's just the role of more interactive design, or something that was user experience design now has become more service design. I have to have an understanding of the end-to-end of a project and all the different teams that it touches. My team is about 30 people, but we work across different silos and help. Probably my main job is building relationships So that also goes to the like column B, like, you know, how do you approach the corporate, I mean, 15 years ago, I worked with the person who ended up hiring me. We did not speak. It was more like a doom scrolling on LinkedIn and being like, yeah, like, commenting on posts that he would make or other people would make, but still, it's still that maintaining a little bit of a relationship. I also find that it is, the place I work has over 100,000 people, that's a lot.
Wow.
My team has 30. The broader team has like, you know, almost 100 just for this particular part of the organization. But I have noticed that not maybe my immediate manager, but my manager's manager values if someone comes to you, not like, oh, well, we don't do that. You can go talk to this person. How about, let me see how I can help you. So then now I'm doing some writing. Normally, this role does not require writing to be part or content creation. I can to a certain extent to then show the content person, this is what we're going for. So I think depending on I'm gonna use the corporate term, depending on the ask. I think I have to understand when, discern when I say, we can try that, even though that's not what we normally do in my team, and I'll pass you on. So I think I'm hired to be specialist, but then please be flexible and help solve people's problems and build a relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I think just really quickly to your question, I think it's a delicate balance of, particularly in production, you know, sometimes you need to stay in your lane because of the time frame and all those other things, but also being able to code switch, I don't know.
I want to follow up on what you were just talking about you're being hired as a specialist, although you have in your back pocket this breadth of experience that they're not accessing. And then the day they find out that you know how to do this stuff, that it was at the top of your rate card, and they expect you to do that for them for your current rate. How do you address that little situation? When they know you can do it, how do you say, I'm sorry, you're not paying me to do that?
I think I'm still learning that. So I think I'm still learning that, and it's been almost a year that I've been there, and no, not everything has been divulged of my skill set. There's a bit of protecting my time, and time and energy that I want to reserve for it's hard to do an art practice and have a full-time job and have a family and be social and participate in conferences. So I don't know how to answer that question, and maybe just because I've only been there a year, I'm still working on this.
My only comment to that is know your worth when you are starting your negotiations within any corporate structure, because it's harder to go up. You know what I'm saying? So don't say, oh, eventually, like maybe they'll give me more money. Like start high, and understand that it may evolve. And if you've got the buffer in your own
Oh, okay.
perspective,
Oh, Sundar, sorry.
you call them people.
Oh, yeah, I was saying that,
You
you had your hand, he's had his hand raised for,
Yeah,
then I'll
I
give you
saw
there,
it.
I
Yeah,
promise, I promise.
So I have a kind of reverse question in a way, because, so the corporate structure, whatever that means, works both, so I work a lot in museums, and it's the same no matter where you go, right? There's some kind of a structure that happens. And I guess this is also directed sort of at the IT world, but that term IT, like from the IT crowd side of things, is kind of not the stuff that we do, right? And to convey that, and Rachel, your background is not IT. You are way beyond IT. But somehow they lump this in, and do you find that part of your job is to also recalibrate inside these systems because they don't understand how amazing the experience really can be? I mean, this kind of segues from your point a little bit. There's also the thing of like educating within the institution that the lowest common denominator is not what we should be striving for. And how do you navigate that? I guess because you are all experts in this side of the fence, which is kind of the amazing stuff, rather than the corporate side of the fence, which is the lowest common denominator. Not to offend.
Minimum
Well,
viable product.
that's where I'm gonna start, right? So the place where you start with it is part of it, you're just happy to have a job. Like, I am happy to have my job, and I want to make them happy and do the job to please them. And lowest common denominator, I mean, I think I understand where you're coming from a lot, right? Because we're as artists and people in really high risk, high reward, intense situations making art, we're used to a lot of stimulation, right? And very high stimulation. And putting a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and heart into getting that out. That's not what again, job, right? Job situation doesn't want that. When they're hiring you to make a big situation, then yes, that's exactly what you need to be delivering, and they're not always gonna be ready for it. But yeah, just to go back to where I started, while I was listening to you, I'm like, I will present my best ideas. And then it's just like producing a show, right? You always start with your big dreams, and then usually we whittle it down based on budget and what's available. But there are, I guess you could say, different constraints in an office environment where the most exciting thing might not be exactly what they want.
Yeah, but corporate theater is exciting. I mean, corporate theater, because there's budget.
Yeah.
Suddenly, right? You know, I mean, there was a launch at NAB that I was part of, and the creatives pitched 5 ideas, and they took all of them. Literally everything. So suddenly, you know, you've got all of the winches, and then the giant LED stage with the giant LED floor, and it's just over and over. A drone. That was a helicopter.
Maybe your show's showing. Maybe your show's.
Huge projects. But my point is that, the creative has budget, and that's exciting. It's exciting to work with. As great as art is, sometimes it's really fun to play with budget.
Oh, actually, I promised Eric I'd do Eric next. Yeah, sorry.
I struggle every day. This is a great talk.
Oh.
I wish it was like hours more, but I'll give you 3 POV kind of me things. So I have a very unicorn problem when I'm constantly courted by corporations all the time, brands, agencies, whatever, companies in-house. And I have 2 careers. So I used to be a visual effects supervisor, so I'm a blue-collar camera guy, optical guy, VFX guy, so I know that whole chain. And then I switched to becoming a producer and project manager of these experiential immersive physical location-based experiences, retail, semi-perm, sphere, shit like that. And I will tell you, as an executive who has to hire people, the boxes in the org chart are not about the overall value add. It is mostly below the exec chain. It's about the role that they do. So if you look at I'm a deep generalist, right? I'm not an expert in shit, but I know the experts if we need the experts. Most of the time, corporate, brand, especially agencies, they're not looking for expertise in-house. In fact, they like the court because they want to say, we got so-and-so to do our thing. They love to star fuck all the time. So it's so for you, it's more about how do you, if I'm a value add, right? I let them know before they even hire me, I'm a value add, okay? So my rate is here. They're like, we can't afford you. Then you only get this side of me. You don't get this other thing. Sure, I'll talk to you, I'll do it, but I'm not occupying other time to do the thing that I also know, because you're not paying me twice. And from an org, from a public company that has shareholders and stuff, they see an org chart or whatever, you can't split the baby. I can't report to 2 people. That's the corporate thinking is, you're a body, you have one thing, we get that you're a Swiss Army knife, but we're only gonna use this all the time with you. And I would do the same thing. I'd be like, you only get this because you don't pay me enough for the value add.
And this is not a full-time, this is a contract that you're talking
It's
about.
either.
It's
It's
either.
actually
Oh,
either.
really?
When I worked at Sphere, I had a ton of visual effects experience and technical yada yada yada. Again, not an expert, but it was insightful so that I can be my group's empath as an executive to say, I understand what Obscura needs, but they don't understand what the conceptual design team. So I have to be the babblefish between the 2. I don't get paid twice for that because I'm in 2 different group meetings. No, they're just like, no, you're here. And it's I don't get the extra check. So that's how they look at it. And it happens on teams too, because some people are like, stay in your fucking lane, you're a producer. What are you doing? It's well, I know this for 20 years. And then they're just like, shut up and look pretty and be over there.
Going for the battlefish reference.
Yeah. microphones.
42.
Yeah.
42.
Exactly. We're in a room with projectors, guys. People.
Oh,
Ah, theater kids.
Question in the back.
Oh yeah. Oh hello. Yes.
I think, given that a lot of us that are freelance or even that work for like creative companies that are not freelancers, but then go to the corporate and grab the jobs, we make it in-house. Given that the landscape of our clients is changing like super rapidly, whether it's an installation job or a set job, I'm really curious if you're feeling that pinch at all in the corporate world as well. If it's like, be it economy, be it changes within the government, if you're feeling on your side, maybe not for your job, but some of your colleagues at the desks next to you, are people also nervous? Are they also?
I think the in-house teams, like, sometimes are challenging and sometimes they're not. It just depends on their level. Sometimes there are in-house teams that get in your way because they don't actually have the skill sets to, but they think that they do, or they're directly related to the client. We've all experienced that before, right? You know, and I think that so much of what we do, particularly as producers, is navigating that stuff and figuring how to, you know, seduce the corporate creative into believing that you are actually correct, or that your system architecture that you're creating for their idea is the way to go, and that they hopefully don't, you know, get in the way, which is what happens, right?
Did I end up missing your question?
Well, I wanted to like bring it back to, you both put the disclaimer in that
Right.
these are your views, not the corporate. And it seems that in your job, it's actually the opposite, where you actually have to use your talent and creativity and knowledge to express the views or the ideas of the corporation. And does that create compromise in your creative product?
I think so. No, but back to the, like, you can have this much of me, but not that extra bit. And whether, I mean, at this time I also said, I don't know how that works. I haven't been called upon it, but it's like, it's partly a guarding of like, this is what you can receive, this is what I will show. Also, it's also just starting to be comfortable with how much can I say. I'm a new person in that kind of culture. It really is a different culture to me. It is really different.
culture
to
is
me.
important.
The language is different to me. I feel like everyone around me knows how to do corporate but me. Because even if they weren't at that company, they have been doing this as their career, whether it's someone who's only is 28 and has been doing this for 5 years still has more knowledge than I in some sense, because they don't know how to do that, how to act the way everyone is acting. But that can be an advantage. I think of things this way. Why don't we do it this other way? But there's still a protection and it was I will say I had to report to the ethics committee that I was participating in this panel, and I was advised to say such and such. I didn't know that such a thing existed. That doesn't happen. Has never happened to me, even, you know, as a freelancer. But I'm like, oh, okay. These are the rules. I do not want to get fired. I will listen to these rules. I don't know if you have something to add to that.
That was beautiful. No, I mean, I think that, I don't even remember the question, I got
Well,
lost.
it's about applying your talent to express the views and the ideas of the corporation.
Isn't that always what we do creatively though? Like you're trying, at least in the creative realm, like, you know, I'm trying to understand or express the brief. I'm trying to like tell the story that my client wants to tell. So I feel like that's normal.
Yeah,
Personally.
I mean, production manager,
Yeah.
so a facilitator of other people's communications, and now those communications are just not requiring me to build mountain backdrops.
Not today. Right, well, actually, do you mind if I grab one more from the? Yeah.
You know, we've kind of been skirting around this topic a little bit, but can you talk a little bit about the negotiation tactics for when things are going south and how we protect ourselves in that like last month of a project possibly? Like where do you draw the lines in the sand? How do we protect ourselves if we see the red flags popping?
I think you have to put in writing, make sure that whatever you're dealing with, you know, that you are flagging it in writing within whatever chain of communication exists for that project. I think that that's quite important in general, you know. that in the world of Slack and, you know, depending on, you know, understand that you are being recorded, right? You know, depending on your communication skill, you know. And I think that that's another thing to be mindful of, is that, you know, our industry is tiny as it comes down to it, and being really, really aware that, you know, it will potentially come back to get you. But I think that keeping it, just communicating where you see the flags, you know, flagging it. This is gonna be a problem. This is why. You know, or asking for help.
Or providing a solution.
I'm talking more about like, say we're at the end, and now it's like, okay, how do we make sure we can show our work? How do we make sure that we're negotiating exit packages? How do we make sure that we're closing projects out? Because I think we can communicate and raise these flags, but, you know, eventually projects end. And we have to be able to talk about this work.
Oh, I understand what you're saying now. Sorry. I think I think a lot of that should get negotiated in the beginning. I think that there have been many situations recently where creatives are not allowed to take claim for their work, right? And that's, you know, sometimes, or vendors are not getting credit in, you know, in the.
I worked with vendors that have turned down $750,000 jobs because they couldn't agree on the portfolio language.
Right.
And they were just like, if we can't show it when it's out there in public and we can, it's like, we're out.
Yeah.
There's no point.
I'm glad it's going
That's
that way.
interesting.
Well, yeah, and hopefully that will continue to happen, because, you know, to not allow creatives specifically, you know, or the vendors that put so much work into these projects, credit for the
Yeah,
work that
the
they
white
do.
labeling is, I can't believe people still do it.
Yeah.
On the internet, it's like, you'll know.
And people know in the small community.
Yeah, that's
so,
right.
actually, well, that's actually the whole point. So we do need to wrap up. I'm supposed to stop this now. But 2 points, like what Blair Neal said the other day, the secret weapon of this industry is the fact that the community is gigantic. You know what I mean? Like this room, like we can continue this conversation.
We should. And
Yeah.
Molly's gonna set up Discord.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm gonna set up Discord channels for each of the
Yeah.
panels if people wanna continue the
Yeah,
conversation.
exactly.
It seems like we have a lot to say.
It's about to be lunchtime, so.
Well, oh my God!
oh,
Reward!
I got
Reward!
it.
Corporate reward.
And remember, they had a challenge for us this morning, have lunch with someone you don't know, and then maybe they weren't in this session, you can share that.
And maybe you'll get a job.
Yeah, maybe. We have an hour and a half for lunch. If you want, you can go visit the Evercoast Volumetrics studio by registration to see work that's going on there. I don't know anything more than that, so
Well,
if
it's
you're
awesome.
interested, I can.
It's like right behind it.
God, tell us about it.
But
It's
think-
easy to miss.
Okay, so
Okay.
Yeah.
with that, this session start up again at 2:30. We had 3 sessions, and
But can we applaud the?
we're going to.
Okay.